Hi, everyone. We have an announcement.
On the July 30th episode of Write Better Together, we will be interviewing the Paul Gay, the writer of The Little Rascals. Oh my gosh.
Oh my
I can't even
gosh.
believe it. It's just like everything it could possibly be in one episode.
So, stay tuned.
Nothing beats a buck and a duck. Welcome, everybody, to Write Better Together. I'm John Myers. Hey, look, everybody, it's Emily Brooks.
Hello, John Myers.
Hey, Emily, what are we talking about today?
Well, we have quite the list and quite the guest once
Oh.
again. We're going to be talking with Brian Baker about writing conflict into your story and layering that conflict.
I remember him from a previous something we did.
Yes. He was in our Wes Anderson Mont Blanc
Oh, yeah.
episode.
Yeah.
Before we talk with Brian, we're going to have a response to a call to action.
Oh.
Then Brian's going to give you all a new call to action.
Oh, my goodness.
We're going to have our topic of the week, our Hey John Myers topic.
So much going on.
And then we're going to have the final act.
Oh, my gosh. There's one thing after another.
So many things. And
then
I have something very special that
arrived in the mail.
I got in the mail
3 months ago.
Do not open until you are on camera playing the next game I have for you. So, very excited. I feel like I'm on Taskmaster. That's very excited.
Oh,
and I got this in the mail.
Oh, and I got
the mascot.
I got this in the mail.
Hey.
And speaking of that, I've never shared this card with you. This is a card that Lauren sent us with those cows.
Aw, that's so sweet.
It says grace and peace.
Aw.
And I'll take a picture of it and send it to you. But she really exists. There's her handwriting.
Aw, thank you, Lauren.
All right.
Well, how did you get out of your bubble?
Oh boy.
You have a story that you've been dying to tell.
Now, don't oversell it. So, in a previous episode, I told you about how I went to 2 different lemonade stands. On the night before, so the night between the 2 lemonade stands, I was asleep and I had a dream, and this actually connects to getting out of my bubble. And we had talked in a previous episode. I didn't dream that much after moving here for like 6 years. I didn't dream, and then 4 years later, till I dreamt again. Emily said I was dreaming and just didn't remember them. So all that happened, and now I started dreaming again, and I had this dream, and so here's the dream, people. So if you're a dream expert, and keep it biblical, but if you're a dream expert, tell me what this dream means. And so I was at like a vendor fair. I was working at a vendor fair, or like a trade show, or a craft show or something. I had a booth. I don't remember what I was selling, Tupperware or something. And there was this woman down the aisle, across the aisle, maybe 6 booths away, let's say, right? So maybe 60 feet away. She kept coming over and talking to me, and one thing led to another, and we started dating, and and she was totally my type, and so we became boy and girlfriend. And wait, though, she took me. So
dogs.
Do what?
Were you also dogs, like in your dog movie?
Yes, we were also dogs. We were also talking dogs. No. She was beautiful. She was vegan. She was she was just my type. And I had never seen this person before. So it's not based on anyone that I know or anything. And so she took me to meet her parents. and in this dream.
Wow, moving fast.
And well, no, the dream lasted forever. So this was on the whatever
It
a
was a
month.
montage. It was like the opening of Up.
Yes, it was a month later, and she took me to meet her parents, and um, they spoke with broken English, and they were very very sweet. They liked me. The girls' parents always liked me, and, but they liked me. They were super friendly and everything. But in the dream, they were like organizing our life for us.
Whoa.
Like, but they were trying to be nice, and they were like, and then you can move into this neighborhood and do like, and they were like, in an effort to be nice, they were being overly nice, and they were like starting to control things that I've never had. I've never had that. Certainly from my own parents or from any girlfriend or wife's parents. I've never had that. They kept their distance, but there was not an issue with them. They kept their different. They didn't try to manage our lives, and so the next day, the Monday on the lemonade trip, when I got the lemonade from the girl with the iPhone that was saving up for the iPhone. What I didn't tell you was when I drove away from the lemonade stand, and a block later,
you met the love of your life.
I saw her taking out I saw her moving in to a house 2 blocks away from my house, and the exact same woman. And she was like breaking down moving boxes and putting them out for the trash, because Monday night's trash night in this neighborhood. And it was her.
What?
And I'm like, so now what do I do with that? So there's so much there. So one, Emily, you are like close to your family, where that you do like go on vacations and stuff together. So I don't know what to do with that, but. And so I'm driving by, I had the top down and everything, and I could see that it was her, and so then I drive by, and she waves, like not waves me down, but she just like waves, because we live where people wave, and then so now the listeners, our regular listeners, know I can walk in any of the 4 directions when I go on my stupid walk. Well, I've already don't like to go on the one towards the little mini library, because that's the farthest one. And now I can't walk by your house, because then I just look creepy. And so now that direction's taken away. So now I can only go on my walk 2 out of the 4 directions from my house, and I don't know what to do about it. And I don't know why I saw her. I'm certain there's nothing I can do. Like, I'm not gonna go knock on her door and sell her Girl Scout cookies, because that would be creepy. Like, what do I do with this information? And then why were her parents micromanaging our lives?
So this is really funny for a lot of reasons to me. Because one, my husband, John, hates it when people tell stories about their dreams, because he thinks it's the most boring thing ever. But so he's like, keep it down to 1 sentence. Nope. I think dreams are fascinating. I love talking about dreams. I think I have really vivid dreams. I also believe that dreams mean nothing, like 99.9999999% of the time.
Well, this one means something, because it was the same person I had never seen before in my life.
Obviously, you said keep it biblical. There are biblical examples of dreams. There's a book I read about a guy who had dreams sent from God, but I don't know how to interpret that. I don't know how to know the difference between a random dream and something meaningful. This is getting very spiritually complex.
And then so we've filmed, actually we filmed more ahead than we had ever anticipated, right? So by the time this airs, she could be my girlfriend, or she could be gone, or she could be gone. Who knows?
She could be married.
No, she's not married. because she would have been married in the dream. So that's not a possibility.
But then how
But
do you like meet her without being super creepy?
well, I'm not doing anything. I'm going to continue to live my life, and
I
I'm
think
not
that
even
is
going to walk in that direction on my walk now.
yeah, don't go to her house and be like, I had a dream about you. Don't do
Well,
that.
then what if like I did run into her like at Aldi or at somewhere, right? And we started talking. Then what if she like 2 months from now saw this episode of the podcast? That would be this is just too much. This is too weird, and I don't know what to do about it. And why were her parents?
Put a This is something you write down, you remember it, and then you move on and see what happens.
I don't need to write it down. It's documented on the internet now
in
for
your
the
head.
whole world to see.
Wow.
Top that. How'd you get out of your bubble?
While you were telling the dream story, I have a friend who will just like text me dream stories, and like I don't have permission to share this, but this is like a full in-depth. His dream had family drama. He said it was like a Pixar movie, and it even had. I'm just gonna again. I don't have permission to share this, but I'm just gonna share this part. It even had a theme about managing to love people despite irreconcilable differences in belief, and also an axolotl character died of old age in there somewhere.
No wonder your husband wants to limit these conversations to one
Exactly,
sentence.
he hates that kind of stuff. It's so funny, but I love it. I so before we started recording, I was like, I don't really have any out of bubble stories, but I kind of do. I mean, it's not that interesting, but um, uh,
Never start a story with "It's not that interesting."
Sorry, you're right. I mean, it's not like a story, but it's like I went to church. I was stacking chairs because we have church in a gym and we have to stack all the chairs afterwards. And this guy just goes, I would help, but I just had surgery. And then we had a conversation for like 5 or 10 minutes about just getting to know each other a little bit. And that's it. But like all it takes was just he actually initiated it, but like all it takes is that initiation of common interests or hey, your dog's really cute. It's really easy to talk to people with dogs. They probably get annoyed by it, but it's like just tell them their dog's really cute. Ask them how long you've had them. How you know? I did that with a kid a while ago. He was looking at my dog, and I was like, "Hey, you can come pet her." And then I was like, "Do you have a dog?" And had this little conversation. That's all it takes.
That's getting out of your bubble. That
Yeah.
So
Like
and you're right about that. Yeah, and you're right about it's just like that one sentence. So I got a text that I'm not at liberty to share, but one of my friends is at a writers conference now, either in New Jersey or New York. I don't remember which one she said, and she texted me last night that said, I made a new pal already, and I just got here, and he goes by both of his names like you do, John Myers. and so I asked her. She hasn't answered yet, but I asked her like, how does one go about like because I know like I do go by both names, but I don't ever be like, and you need to call me both names. Like I don't do it that. Like how does that come up in conversation? Because we've had guests on this show that they just call me John because they don't know that everyone calls me John Myers.
My mom has caught on though because the other day we were talking about the podcast and I said John and I was like my husband John and she goes, oh, I know, you would have said John Myers if not.
Good. My brand has infiltrated your family.
So what call to actions do we have?
We have a recording that you're going to play us.
Yes, I do. Okay, so we have a response to our call to action. What is your villain origin story?
Oh, this is a good one.
And it's a video. So just a reminder, everybody, that you can send videos.
Hi there, my name is Shamila Baena. I'm a writer and a screenwriter, and I want to share with you a villain origin story. When I was a kid, my mom used to work in an advertising company, and they were lying around these flyers, brown, boring, of a set of books, of an encyclopedia books called The Swing. So I decided to make this mask, or one of them, and then I turned into the Chica Swing, a superhero. And there was this colleague of my mom that used to work in a circus, and he was able to do somersaults and flips in the wall in the air, and as he was a stuntman. I didn't know that back then. I mean, I was 4 or 5 years old. I only know I have this superpower when I use the mask, and I could throw this guy over my shoulder and flip in the air, and as the super villain he was, and crash into the wall of the other side of the office. And that's a story of how I vanquished my first super villain.
It's quite the elaborate villain origin story, all the way from Mexico. She's somewhere in Mexico.
Yes. She is from Cholula. Cholula. I think that's how to pronounce it.
Wow.
I didn't look it up. I made it up. Well, it is time for our big idea, our conversation with Brian.
Welcome back, everybody, to Write Better Together, the interview portion. That person over there looks familiar, but hey, everybody, it's Emily Brooks.
Hello, John Myers. Hey, everybody, it's Brian Baker.
Oh, that's why he looks familiar.
Hi. Brian, can you tell our listeners about yourself?
Sure. So I am a poet, creative nonfiction writer. I got an MFA at WKU. I work as a freelance editor, working on creative writing and all kinds of stuff. And I have a YouTube channel about fancy fountain pens and things. So yeah,
yes.
I do a lot of stuff.
That's why he looks familiar. He was that guy on our fountain pen Wes Anderson Mont Blanc video.
Yes. I was your non-expert.
Yes, and so if you all haven't listened to that one, we also talked about writing by hand and other things, and that was a really fun little side episode. So you all should check it out. But Brian, what are we talking about today?
Well, we were talking about conflict in storytelling, conflict in life, I guess. Wherever it goes, we'll see.
Yes.
Emily does not like conflict.
I hate conflict. We've talked about this before because I am writing a novel, and my mom gave me feedback that said all of your characters are too nice. Because I don't like getting in conflict with anybody, and so when I'm writing my stories, I have the same inclination to just make them all even if they do get into conflict, they solve it very quickly. They're very quick to say I'm sorry or I forgive you. I have a hard time letting them sit with it.
I'm sorry I tied your girlfriend to the railroad tracks. Is that the antagonist? So how are you in real life? I'm sensing Brian is much like Emily in real life.
I am a little bit. I've had experiences actually where I've gotten upset with people and then very quickly apologized to them later, and they've been like, oh, I didn't even know you were upset. You're fine. So
yeah.
So in real life, I don't avoid conflict, and but I don't go seek after it either.
Right.
And and I don't like hurting people's feelings, but that doesn't mean that I won't speak the truth in a room full of 7 people. I'll be the person that isn't afraid to speak the truth in the room of 7 people. And then if it turns into a thing, I'll apologize if I offended anyone. But the truth is the truth, no matter who believes it or cares about it.
That's actually a hard thing in writing groups too. I feel like when you're first in a writing group or in a writing workshop, you have to learn to be honest, even if you don't want. You learn to be honest in a way that doesn't hurt their feelings, and conversely, as a group, you have decided that this isn't personal, and so even when you're getting feedback, you're like, okay, this isn't supposed to hurt my feelings. It's not going to hurt my feelings. It's just the truth.
Yeah. There's definitely a lot of conflict in writing groups, or at least there can be.
Yes.
No, that's a great point. Does that happen to you, Brian?
It did in grad school. I remember, and I think part of it was I was focused on writing creative nonfiction, and I was mostly workshopping with fiction writers. So sometimes I felt like they just wanted me to do things their way, even though I was in a slightly different genre. And so I remember just kind of like they're giving me all this feedback, and inside I'm just like getting mad. I'm just like, oh, you don't understand me. You don't get what I'm trying to do.
Yep, that can
But
definitely happen.
yeah, but I mean, I had to kind of simmer down and be like, no, they've got a point. I can definitely learn from this, and yeah.
So just this week, Emily and I, we haven't talked about it yet. So I'll keep it short. I just gave notes similar to the notes that we have talked about, and this was one of my friends, and I don't normally give notes to friends, but she's the best plot hole closer that I know, and so we still trade notes. And so I gave her notes on her pilot, and as we've discussed on a previous episode with someone else, this pilot had no story. It did everything that a pilot is supposed to do very well, where it introduced all the characters. There was a premise for it. There were bookends that could be turned into a story, but there was no A story or a B story, and so there was no resolution at the end. We knew everybody, which was good, and we saw the story world, which was good, but there was no protagonist. Well, it might be an ensemble, but there was no clear goal for the protagonist or for the main people in the ensemble. We saw some of the obstacles, and so the audience was left. In this case, the audience was one person, the reader. The audience was left without the emotional closure, and I told her that. And which is a hard thing to hear when she's really, really good at plot. And I was trepidatious to her response when I didn't hear back for a couple days. But I just heard back from her this morning, and she's like, "You're 100% right. I'm so glad that you pointed that out." And she's working. She was adapting a novel from someone else, and so that like she was trying not to step on that. I'm reading between the lines. She was probably trying to not step on the toes of the novel that she was adapting. So that's probably how that happened. So yeah, it's a tightrope that you have to watch, but you're not helping anyone if you don't tell them the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it sounds like a major issue in that story was that there wasn't conflict.
In her, in the pilot that I read.
Yeah.
See, she also had correct. So in that episode, there wasn't. She had the whole Bible for the 8 episodes of that whole season. So there was later, but you're correct. In the pilot, there wasn't.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and it's hard to have.
There were little minor conflicts, but like people were paired off with a mentor and a trainee, so there were conflicts between those, but there was no story conflict to resolve.
Yeah, it's hard to have story without conflict, because conflict is kind of it's kind of where the momentum comes from for a story. It's what kind of pushes the story forward, which is actually interesting when you like think about the parallel between storytelling and real life, and dealing with conflict in those two different places. Like, what does conflict do in our real life? Does it give us momentum? Like, does it give our own story momentum? I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. That's something that hadn't really occurred to me before.
I have a little theory, untested, unproven theory, that, you know how like there are people who just seem to gravitate towards conflict? Yes. My theory is that it's because they do feel that it is pushing them forward in some way, or moving the needle in some way forward in their life. That it like makes them feel more alive, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Again, just a theory. Whereas I am like, I like things how they are. I don't really need things to like I don't need things constantly to be happening, or to constantly feel something, or to feel angry or feel upset. But it feels like there are people out there who actually enjoy that or want that somehow.
But couldn't they, this is to both of you, couldn't they fill that void with something positive instead of something negative?
Yes, I think so. So I realized that we've been saying conflict kind of generally, but do we mean like general conflict that could come from any source, or do we mean specifically like relational conflict?
But how how would you have conflict that's not relational? I guess internal, like internal conflict of, is this a line I cross? But other than that, like even if you had conflict with a giant, with whatever, the Boeing organization, Boeing Airlines, it's still relational with whoever the person that's on the other end of the phone.
I guess I'm thinking like, I don't know, like finding out you have an illness is a conflict, or a tornado coming to your house is a conflict.
Yeah, I think that conflict, it's definitely, there has to be some kind of pull or tension between two different things. And that can happen internally because of some kind of stimulus. Something has caused that. Whether that's something external that is causing worry or doubt or fear, or something internally that can be a source of conflict, or it could be another person that is two people creating that conflict. Yeah, I think that like going back to a tornado, I think that could be conflict. But what I've seen, or what I've noticed with conflict in storytelling, at least, is that the best stories have multiple layers of conflict. So if you had a story about somebody running away from a tornado, it really wouldn't be that interesting without something else. So like that could be the plot, is them running away from the tornado, but they have to be wrestling with something deeper and more personal to really make it a story worth reading, or a story worth watching, or something like that.
So in film school, they taught us, and I still try to do this, and many people disagree with this, but there should be conflict, like what Brian was saying, in every scene. And if a film has 96 scenes, that's hard to do. But sometimes that conflict is when I was trying to think of examples from what Emily was said of where it's not relational. So sometimes there's a conflict of the thing that the protagonist says in the 40th scene is in conflict with what he or she said in the 20th scene, right? So the audience is aware of that juxtaposition between this guy. Is this guy lying, or is he like, has he changed his mind? So there's still conflict there in that scene.
Yeah. And I think that as I've thought about conflict, I've tried to think of like different ways you could define it, or different ways it could manifest. Because, you know, if someone were to kind of take what you've said about a conflict in every scene, if they were to take that too literally, they might think like, oh, there has to be an argument in every scene, or there has to be a fight in every scene, or something like that. But really, it's, I wish there was a better word than conflict. I wish there was something more accurate, because I feel like it's more, it can be the argument, it can be the fight, but it can also just be something something nagging, something that feels like it needs to be resolved, something. So I think we can look at conflict from a pretty broad perspective and say,
it definitely doesn't mean
here as well.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't mean a fight or an argument in every scene, but it can mean the conflict between what's what the character's saying and the subtext of what they're saying,
right?
And the audience is aware of that, and that tension there. That's I don't want to say more. That happens more than actual whatever dictionary definition of conflict.
And I liked, Brian, what you said too about like the internal conflict, like something has to be going on, like an internal struggle, because like the tornado example, like if our character isn't experiencing some kind of internal conflict, then that's not interesting. And so when I'm thinking about even like early stages of planning a novel, I might be thinking about what are the conflicts in the story, and what's the best character to put into that story where those conflicts become personal and that create an internal conflict. So and not even personal externally, but even like, oh, this is changing like what they think about things, or this is changing, this is challenging part of the core of who they are.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think that there can be kind of like an existential element to conflict, like, trying to figure out who you are, figuring out your identity,
Yeah.
your purpose, like that. There's conflict in that.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. And then a lot of times that is triggered by some kind of external event.
yeah,
And maybe that's why we don't like conflict, because it forces us to confront something within ourselves that we're not ready to confront. But it
yeah,
does push us to, I think, become better people.
yeah. As I was thinking about conflict, I was thinking about the hero's journey archetype,
Mhm.
um, and how the hero usually kind of denies their call to adventure.
Right.
Kind of like you were just saying, like it's not really something that people always want, to grow and change and kind of get pushed into the unknown or whatever. But so even just in that hero's journey kind of archetype, you see the different multiple levels of conflict. That conflict within the character, and then the external kind of bad guy kind of conflict, good versus evil kind of thing. So yeah.
Just to branch off of that, just because it's which ends up happening, just because it's a conflict that you don't want doesn't mean it's a conflict that you can avoid, and that you I mean, you have to push through and endure that. One of my life tenets, ding ding ding, put another life tenet on that page, is that you have, if you just have, when there's a conversation, this is not a very good life tenet because I'm talking all around the sentence. There's a conversation that you have to have that you don't want to have. If you start it, as the life tenet is, start that conversation that you don't want to have. Because if you just start it, sit the person down and you start it, God will give you the words to use to finish it, and you'll come out 5 minutes or 5 hours later at the other end of that conversation, and it'll be resolved. And if you would have never started it, and you didn't start to have the hard conversation, it wouldn't be resolved. So the same as in storytelling, even though that hero doesn't want to go, if they just have to go. Or
Yeah, that's interesting, because it's like if you kind of ignore the conflict, or just try to run from it, then it's going to weigh on you at the very least, if not come and find you.
And I think that's also a sign of a good, like, because most of the time, and I try not to say anything of like, you always need this, but like most of the time you do want your protagonist to be active. And that's a sign of them being active and not just reactive. Which actually, John Myers, that life tenet, made me think about one of my pet peeves in storytelling, which is when conflict is driven by the fact that two characters won't have a conversation that they need to have. So usually one has a secret that they're unwilling to share, or one person is assuming something about the other person and hasn't actually like confronted them about it. And it drives me crazy because I'm like, just have the conversation. Like if you just had the conversation, all of this would be resolved. And it's usually in romances.
Well, that's what I was going to say. A writer can use that to their advantage, like in a farce. But if it's in a drama or a romance, it's really annoying.
Right, because if the character really is trying to hide something intentionally, then the conversation wouldn't help. But it's usually in a romance or a sitcom where they actually are trying to resolve things, but they're resolving things in all the wrong ways because they're just not having the conversation.
Yep.
Yeah, that's actually a pet peeve of mine as well. And it's interesting. So my wife and I are watching the remake of All Creatures Great and Small. I don't know if you've heard of that.
I've watched some of that. I loved the original.
Yeah.
And so I've only seen one episode of the new one because I was watching it with my parents, but it was very good.
Yeah. I watched the old one as a kid, and so
I love it so much.
Yeah, so I really enjoyed watching this remake. It's really well done. But it's been interesting to watch it and kind of observe my expectations for what's about to happen, and see how much like bad TV has programmed me to think certain ways about conflict. because like you said, Emily, like there's like often like somebody has like a secret or something and they don't resolve it in the best way, or it just kind of goes unresolved. I don't know, just and so like so in the show as I'm watching it, like somebody has a secret or somebody has a problem and you're like, oh no, this is about to blow up in their face and it's just gonna, everything is gonna go crazy and it's gonna take them a whole season to resolve this conflict. And no, it's resolved by the end of the episode. And it's like,
Yes.
they behave like real people. They try to be mature about things, and they just take care of it. And so it's interesting to see how, like, yes, you want conflict, but you don't want to hype the conflict so much that it becomes melodramatic or hyperbolic or whatever. Like, conflict in real life isn't always like that, and it can be resolved quickly sometimes, and it can be low stakes, I guess, sometimes, rather than like the end of the world kind of stuff.
And it's satisfying too. So when you were saying that, like I was thinking about the first season of Ted Lasso does that. I don't know if you all watched Ted Lasso, but it does the same thing where you think, oh no, this is going to go on forever, or these people can never be friends again. Or there's this one scene where you're just like, this is going to ruin this entire relationship. But they're so good about just it. What they're doing is the characters model what it looks like to resolve conflict.
Yeah.
And I think it's really satisfying as a reader or as a viewer to see that instead of seeing people reacting poorly to that conflict.
Yeah.
So that's what I was gonna say, and you said it. So Ted Lasso models proper behavior intentionally, and it's super positive. Lucy, one of our future guests, Lucy Vihey, she's actually written about that just in general, that in more general terms. But when entertainment can model proper behavior, that raises it to the next level.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it's important to model proper behavior too, because I mean, I think people are smart enough to kind of tell the difference between fiction and reality and stuff. But if you're constantly being fed content that sees the world in one way, I think that it's going to start to rub off on you eventually. And so I think that modeling that good behavior, or at least like more authentic behavior, is important.
Yes, I agree. I'm thinking of examples where this is not done well. My husband John and I just watched The Bad Batch, which is the Star Wars spinoff about the clones. And we love the characters and we love the Clone Wars and all of that. But they really struggled with the conflict in that whole show, and part of it was because the characters would just get along so well, kind of like the struggle that I have. And specifically, there's these older guys and then there's this little girl who's like the main character. And they would be like, her name's Omega, and they'd be like, Omega, you need to stay back. You can't come with us. And she's like, but, and she has like a little, like one sentence argument for why she should come. And they're like, okay, come along. And the same thing happens like in every episode between them and her, or between them and each other, where there's like a second of conflict and then they're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
The end. No more conflict.
So I actually have a quote from William Martell, who we've talked about before on the show. One of my heroes, a screenwriter. And this fits with that perfectly. He says so the question was, we know what makes a story, right? Hero, a goal, an obstacle, and a ticking time clock. And but what makes the story compelling? That's a different question. And the thing that makes a story compelling, according to William Martell, is characters that we care about. So you have that in Omega. Characters that we care about struggling with a conflict that keeps getting worse. Well, it doesn't keep getting worse when they go, okay, come on, let's go.
Exactly.
And so that's what there's no compellingness if the person just agrees to the thing.
Exactly. Yeah. And again, the conflict has to hit the right people too, because like certain kinds of conflict aren't even going to bother some people as much as it would bother somebody else. And so you have to think about who are you Like, who is your protagonist and what conflicts are going to really get to their core?
So is there a time, ready for this one? Is
Ready.
there a time that we should seek conflict? That we that we should put ourselves in situations where we know there will be conflict. In 1999, Emily will remember it because she's 2 months older than I am. I made a decision and this is true, I made a decision to never go anywhere that I didn't want to go, with anyone I didn't want to go with, to do anything I didn't want to do. And it was the most freeing decision I've ever made in my life. I have violated it 1.5 times, and both times I was miserable, and they were both probably 10 years ago, and I will never do that. But I'm also avoiding conflict doesn't bother me. Well, it's because I've set up a life without any, because I'm not going to go anywhere with someone I don't want to go with to do something I don't want to do. And so talk me out of that that lifestyle. You're not going to, but you can try. Am I too conflict avoidant?
How do you keep that mindset with just like the daily grind of work and stuff?
Because I love everything. Like,
you always love every minute of it.
Yeah, and so there's something I want to say, but I don't want to say it. So I've had people in my life, significant others in my life, who you go to Aldi with, and they're just like, "Oh, look at these strawberries," and then they're and this is like a true story. Look at these strawberries, and they'll talk to a total stranger and go, "Have you ever seen any strawberries like that?" And it's just like someone gave them $1 million because they found like the perfect thing of strawberries at Aldi, and I aspire to be that person, and I think that's fantastic. I'm not there yet, but yeah, I like try to count it all joy and find the I don't know, I can try to make everything fun. There are people that
I love that.
There are people that you can surround yourself that'll drag you down.
For sure.
Yeah.
So get away from them.
Well, and like speaking of, like when you said, you know, you're not going to do something that you don't want to do, like that's I think that's valid. I said like I refused to go to a party the other day, and I felt terrible about it. Even like I didn't want to go. It wasn't a big deal. It wasn't like it wasn't a big deal, but I still felt bad for saying no just because I was tired and I didn't know anybody there and I just didn't want to go.
Wouldn't bother me. Would it bother you, Brian?
I don't know. I'm kind of a people pleaser, so I think you've given me something to think about here.
Yeah.
But going back to what you were saying about like, should we seek out conflict? I think, again, going back to the idea that there are different kinds of conflict, I don't think you need to seek out relationship conflict necessarily. You don't need to make your relationships harder, but I think that you probably should seek out whatever conflict is happening inside you. Like, what are the things you want? What are the things that you are struggling with? Those are things that you should pay attention to and probably take head on. And there might be things that you want to do, but they're kind of terrifying at the same time, or it's outside your comfort zone or your current abilities or something, and you have to kind of take a leap somewhere. And so those might be examples of positive conflict that maybe you should welcome into your life.
Dude, so I got to cover this person's name, but what you just said, someone actually posted this today. You won't be able to see this in your cars at home, but I'll read it to you, Anna. So it's a real post. Did you see that?
Yeah, we saw it.
If you saw the name, we're gonna have to black out the name. I didn't see the name. So she posted, "A relationship with no conflict is not a loving relationship." Oh my God. And then only the jerks agree. Like there were people that agreed with her, and they're like, darn right. And you just know that they were jerks, like that they were always like picking fights and stuff. And I don't agree that a relationship with no conflict is not a loving relationship. I think that you can
Wow.
address those issues ahead of time.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So when you said don't pursue conflict in a relationship, I think there are times when so there are people that are going to be in your life that you do not have to get into conflict with because you don't have to see them every day. You may never see them again. But when it's like your spouse, like if I am upset with John about something, then
Not me.
not you, my husband, John. If I'm upset with John about something and I bottle it up, it's going to come out in some way or another. And usually it's not going to be pretty unless I'm intentional about like, okay, I need to address this now. So that it doesn't become anything more. And it's usually something like really small. Like it kind of annoyed me when you left your dishes in the sink or something. You know, like something's really small like that could build over time. And so I like to address those things as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
But I don't even know if that's conflict or just like living with somebody and trying to work together.
I mean, I think there is some conflict there, but it's, but I don't know, you manage it, you deal with it. And I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, where sometimes if you try to run from the conflict, it doesn't work out. So sometimes you do have to just kind of confront it, but then that allows you to move on and move past it. And I know that for me, I don't want this to become like a relationship counseling
Right.
podcast. It's a story podcast, right? But I know for me, in my marriage, like if something is bothering me or annoying me, I'll stop and think like, okay, was this a problem yesterday? Was this a problem a week ago? Was this a problem a month ago? If it's just here in this moment, it's probably never going to happen again. So I probably don't need to like get up all uptight about it, you know?
That's really good. Yeah.
Like, you know, if something weird happens and we're like at the airport or something, it's like, well, when's the next time we're going to be at the airport? We're too poor to fly. So like never, you know? So
that's a good point.
So I just don't deal with that, you know, but if it's like a daily thing, like you said, dishes or something, then that's something that I would maybe address. So,
well, Brian, you didn't know
That's
this,
a
but
great
we
point.
have your wife on another screen. Here she is.
What?
Tell us if Brian is talking the truth about the dishes. Not
you
really.
had me for half a second there.
Not really.
So, okay. I have one more kind of question to bring up, which is when you're writing your characters, how do you, fiction or nonfiction, like how are you addressing conflict in relationships?
Yeah. I think I have to answer this more as an editor because I don't really write a lot of fiction or a lot of character-based stuff, but I work with a lot of fiction writers and things. So, sorry, can you remind me what your question was?
It was really vague. I'm thinking we've talked about conflict in general but like when you're actually writing a story or editing a story, like where are you looking for the conflict just on the page and like in a scene? And how is that structured? Or I don't know what I'm asking. Really.
Right. No, I think I understand. Yeah. So when I'm working with writers, with their characters and things, I would first, I think, look at kind of what we talked about. Like, is this realistic conflict? Like, is this like the good kind of the realistic, authentic kind of conflict that happens in real life, or is this like I don't know, like just something really fake and cheesy? So I look for like the authenticity, and I try to help them kind of make sure, like, is this how a real person would behave in this situation? Is this really what a real person would do? But then I also try to help them look at the layers of conflict. I guess we talked about that a little bit too. Just it's not enough just to have a main character facing down a bad guy. Like that's conflict, but that's just one level, and it's kind of the most obvious level of conflict. And so I would also help them look at like, okay, what about the character's friends or their family? What are their interactions like? Is there some kind of tension or conflict there? And again, it doesn't have to be big and melodramatic necessarily. It should be realistic, but something there is helpful to kind of give momentum and depth to the story. And then also that internal conflict as well, as the character is wrestling with their external world, whether that's taking on a bad guy or dealing with a relationship or something. There also has to be something within that character that is changing and shifting and struggling with themselves as well as their experience, I guess. So that was kind of like a shotgun answer. So hopefully I hit something there.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes me think too about, I think sometimes our response to like the idea that we have to raise the stakes, if we're told like, you got to raise the stakes, we might think, oh, I need more enemies, or I need more, like more things being thrown at the character. But another deeper way to raise the stakes is actually to give the character more that they care about, more to lose.
Yeah, actually, I love that. And actually, have you guys watched the Avatar sequel, Way of Water?
Yes,
I have not.
Yeah.
Okay. So I thought that was a really interesting sequel because, the first one was, big, epic action and stuff. And so you would expect the sequel just to kind of like level it up to 11, and they didn't do that. Like a lot of it was focused. They raised the stakes by making the characters care about more instead of it just being like a romance or whatever. Suddenly they have a family, they have children that they have to watch out for. So there's more to care about. And I thought it was really interesting how James Cameron, like, yes, there was a lot of big action, but a lot of the movie was very slow and very zoomed in on the characters rather than upping the spectacle and the action and all that kind of stuff. So I thought that was really interesting.
It's funny that you brought up James Cameron because I wasn't going to say this, but the reason why I was thinking about the power creep thing, the like raising the stakes, is because my husband and I were watching Aliens. And for the first time, and the first one was so intense. And then the second one by James Cameron, it was also intense, but he raised the stakes in both ways. There was the power creep because there's more aliens, but also he added a little girl. And adding a little girl was way more, to me, effective in raising the stakes than just adding a bunch more aliens to shoot.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a great point.
Because I feel like there's kind of this, I don't know, you would probably know more about this, but I feel like in movies and TV, there's like this unspoken rule that you can't hurt kids.
Yeah. Yes.
That's broken a little bit here and there, but like having a kid there is like, you got to protect that kid. Nothing can happen to that kid. And so when it seems like something is going to happen to that kid, that really that definitely raises the stakes.
Yeah, absolutely. You see that in The Quiet Place, if you've watched that.
I haven't.
Terrifying film.
I'm not much of a scary movie person.
I'm not either, but my husband is, so I keep getting pulled into watching these.
If I were to watch a scary movie, though, it would probably be A Quiet Place. I've heard really good things about it.
It is really good, but definitely like worry about the kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've read A Quiet Place.
Oh.
And imagine reading that because there's no dialogue.
Wow.
Wow. That's interesting.
Yeah, and it's not spaced like a regular screenplay. It's a some might say it's a work of art, but that's a different.
Wow.
That's a previous episode.
That's really neat. I'd never thought about what it would look like on paper.
Yep.
Huh.
All right, are you ready to give us a call to action, Brian? Give it to our listeners.
I'm feeling a lot of internal conflict about this right now because
we did put you on the spot.
A little bit. Well, it's fine. It's fine. Well, since this is like mostly a story writing kind of focused podcast, I think I would just say, look at whatever it is that you are making, creating, and try to add conflict to it. If you have conflict already, add a second layer. Even if you take a broad approach to what you mean by conflict. Try to add something that creates tension or momentum for your audience or your viewer or your reader or whatever. So I think that would be my call to action.
That's interesting that you said that, because while you were talking, while you're giving that last answer, I was actually thinking no one will, any of our listeners that listen to this episode, they'll never look at conflict the same after we've done something for them in the last 20 minutes, and
Well,
they
if we've
won't
done
look
that,
at it
then
the
we've done our
same.
job.
They'll look at it through a prism of all different angles now.
I'm
Yeah.
thinking about how I can add layers of conflict to my story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So listeners, if you want to do that, then let us know how you did that. You can respond in the show notes at writebettertogether.com/podcast, or you can respond at our Facebook page when we share this episode. And our Facebook page is Write Better Together Now. And we would love to hear from you.
Yep.
So,
Thank you, Brian.
Brian, thank you so much. That was
Yeah.
one of
This
my
was
favorite
fun.
conversations. So thank you so
Oh,
much for being
thanks.
on here.
We'll put all the
That was
links
good.
in the show notes of where you can get a hold of Brian. Brian
Yes,
does all
for
kinds
sure.
of. Tell him what you do, and then we'll say goodbye.
Yeah, I mentioned it a little bit at the beginning, but I'm a freelance editor. So if you need help with adding conflict to your story, you can reach
Yeah.
out to me and I can give you some pointers. Or if you just want to say hi, feel free to reach out.
There you go.
Perfect. All right. Thank you.
you.
Thanks.
Bye.
And we're back. Man, that Brian, I tell you, he's like, when he said that thing about the thing, oh boy. That was a hot take.
So good. Wow.
You're speechless.
Yeah, that was awesome. And what a great call to action, too.
Can you believe?
Yeah. So, John Myers,
Yes.
do you...
It changed from Hey John Myers to So John Myers.
Oh, hey, John Myers.
Okay, now I'll pay attention. Yes.
Oh, why are we so giggly? Do you know anything about sneezing?
Sneezing?
Yeah, and I'm gonna give you a little bit of help this time.
Wait, is that what you said though? Sneezing, achoo,
Sneezing.
gesundheit.
Yes.
Okay.
So a lot of my Hey John Myers segments so far have been about languages.
So that was, I was gonna be like, are you gonna tell me it's a language? During the course of a week now, in between when we film these, I like watch the news for nature things and water and trees and birds. I'm like, she's gonna. Do you know about this bird that whatever lives underwater? And whales. I did not. The sneezing was not on my radar.
Do you have a guess of maybe what I might talk about?
So you're going to teach me about sneezing language.
Yes.
So I will guess that you're going to say people in different cultures respond to a sneeze in different ways.
Correct. And that's half of what I'm going to talk about.
I
So
get half a prize.
You said, bless you, Gesundheit, right?
Yes.
So different cultures have different ways of responding to sneezes for some reason. In Argentina, they may say salud. I'm not going to try to pronounce all the ones that I can't, but I'll say like the translation. So some in France, they would say at your wishes. Russia would say be healthy. China says I'm sorry. So there's all
Me
these like
too.
different ways.
I'm switching to I'm sorry.
Gesundheit means good health. I love salud just because it just says health, and then Italy says may say health or cheers.
Oh.
So those are the responses. But there's another half to this.
I used to know the French one, but I don't know it anymore.
I just said it. I thought.
You didn't say French.
At your witches, but I don't know how to pronounce French things.
Oh.
There's too many vowels.
All right. So what's the other half?
So the other half
As if that weren't enough. That was a full Hey John Myers right there.
is the other half is that we sneeze in different accents.
Nope. Not believing it. Fake news.
So we actually here in the US we say achoo, right? Like that's just it's like how we say cock-a-doodle-doo for a rooster, right? But that's just the sound that we're making because that's the sound that we have learned to make from all of the people around us. But in different cultures, different areas, they don't say achoo. They have different sounds. And again, I'm not going to try to pronounce these accurately because I don't know exactly what they are. But for instance, I'm seeing etchu, hakushan, enchi, apshu, achum. I'm not pronouncing these right, but it's, so there you go.
So you really say achoo when you sneeze?
I think a lot of people do. I've also
My
heard people
mom.
or like a chi or like a poo, like.
True. That's true.
But that, like,
My
I
mom
feel
used
like
to
it's
scream.
standard, right?
My mom used to scream.
Oh my goodness.
Like you could hear it all the way across the whole house.
I feel like in my family it's mostly going to be like a chi. There's like a little
Polite.
sound.
Wow.
Sometimes I sneeze so loudly though that my husband, I scare him.
And then he goes, if that was a result of a dream, only tell me one sentence.
Exactly. Yeah, we do the same thing when we do like the sound effects for animals. Like like cock-a-doodle-doo.
Yeah.
Like other people aren't going to pronounce like say cock-a-doodle-doo. They may use completely different wording to describe that sound.
I thought of that while you were saying that because not everyone says bow wow.
Right. Exactly.
All right, cool.
There you have it. Which means
it's time for you to ring the bell.
oh yeah. I was gonna skip that again. Hey everybody. If you like this podcast, we would absolutely love it if you would write us a review to tell other people how much you like it, or just any other feelings you have, so that other people can find us. Because it's really hard, actually, for a new podcast to be seen on the podcast platform. So reviews and subscriptions, those all really help. And share with your friends.
I thought this was like our 10th anniversary or 11th anniversary or something. Now we're not new anymore. This is the 12th year or something, isn't it?
Yeah.
All right, continue.
I forget these episodes are we're gonna share them so far away, but it's still helpful. I hear people.
It's helpful, even in our 12th year.
I listen to a lot of podcasts, and even the really popular ones say that. So I'm just repeating what they say.
I agree. 100%.
Which means now it's time for
the final act.
The final act.
Today's final act.
I'm so excited.
So first I have a question. Do you know, don't tell us, but do you know the topic of your next blog post?
But you don't want me to tell you?
Don't tell, just do you already know it?
No.
Okay. Do you know what it might be?
No.
Okay.
I have several ideas.
Okay, so whatever idea is the hardest of those, like that you haven't worked through yet, like you need to have this tough conversation, like if my dad were still alive, I need to have this tough conversation with my dad or whatever. So whichever one is the hardest one that you have to work through.
Okay.
And people aren't going to know if it's the next one or not because who knows when they're going to watch this. So I want you to do something with that information in a second. But first, open the envelope. Oh, wait, I got to tell you the prize. First, the prize is, I'm dragging this out so you don't get to open the envelope. It is a $1 serving of Kraft macaroni and cheese gummies. Oh, just what you want to win. They also have a $4 serving, but that's the comfort noodle right there. Don't
Oh,
make
you
that
know who
face.
gave me bacon candy in at school?
I would if you wanted.
Someone gave me bacon candy, and I was like, "What is this?"
It was not me, but I would. So yeah.
That
And
is
when
disgusting.
I bought this, I'm like, I can't wait to get home and try these because I was joking. And she's like, they taste like strawberry. They don't even taste like cheese. So the cashier,
That's actually good to know.
the cashier had eaten them already. All right. So that's what you win. Today's game. Open the envelope.
Okay.
Today's game is called. Open it in camera.
Oh, well, I have to share it, so I'm sorry.
Yes. Today's game is called. I'm waiting till you show what's in there. Today's game is called Unravel the Cord as you unravel your life.
Oh my god.
We're gonna put 60 seconds on the clock. I stole this from Taylor Tomlinson. And while you untangle, and we want people at home to play along. So if you don't have a tangled up cord in your house, go to your husband. If you're married, go to your husband. He's got one somewhere. And so you're gonna have 60 seconds to untangle this cord while you talk through that tough issue that we mentioned that someday you will blog about. And so you cannot be quiet for 60 seconds. And remember in a previous episode where I said I solved the time limit issue? That's how you got 60 seconds to do this thing. So unravel the cord as you unravel your life. Let me get the clock on here.
No. Hold on, because I have to choose a topic that's not going to be super heavy. Because
well, you don't have to even say the topic. Just talk around it. But like, you know, just have the conversation, have the hard conversation, and but you don't you can talk all around it. You don't have to say what the actual issue is. If I were playing, I would just jump off into the deep end and have the tough conversation and use this as an opportunity to work through some of those words.
Can I use a book that I want to write related to my blog?
Is it hard and meaty and tough?
Yeah.
So sure. If you want to cop out and take the easy way. Is it something you have to untangle?
Yeah.
Then sure. Then that will fit the terms of this game. All right, I have 60 seconds on the clock. I will tell you when you get down to 10 seconds. If you don't, you have to talk the entire 60 seconds.
Okay.
If you pause, there's no prize, and you have to hold up to the cord to the camera. I will describe your progress as we're going along for the people listening into the car. Right now, it's a fairly knotted earbud cord. Is that how you would describe it?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Legitly.
I feel like I'm also the kind of person, like I'm the person that people would hand stuff like this to.
Exactly. I felt that's why.
Would be like, unravel this for me, and I'd be like, oh, okay.
When I saw Taylor Tomlinson play this, I'm like, yeah, Emily would be so good at that. So that's why I mailed you that.
I'm a knitter. So.
Oh yeah. There you
I
go.
don't think pickles all the time.
All right, ready?
All right, ready.
3, 2, 1, go.
Okay, so the reason why I chose a book instead of the blog is because on the recent blog post that I wrote, I mentioned that I really want to write a book about The Sickness Unto Death by Soren Kierkegaard. I really want to write that in my own words in a modern language because it is very meaningful to me. But I have a few problems that have kept me from getting started. One is I'm not an expert on Kierkegaard. And there are a lot of experts on Kierkegaard and on this book and who have already written books about it. But they're not necessarily, they're for scholars. They're not for the general person to learn from it. And then also, man, it's hard to do two things.
20 seconds left.
Oh gosh,
You're making great progress.
I'm not gonna make it. One of the problems is that Kierkegaard actually also says in the beginning of the book that like he can't describe it any other way. But it's the most convoluted way of describing something. Like it's
5
like
seconds left.
it's like a math problem, and he can't do it.
Time is up.
Ah! That was hard.
Did,
I realized that I was talking fast because I thought that it would make it unravel faster, and it doesn't. It doesn't work that way.
but you did. So you did. Of the.
Make
So
progress.
I'll give you half of the noodles, the comfort noodles, because you made progress, but you talked the whole time. So that's half the challenge, and then you didn't get the untangled, so you don't get that half of the challenge. And,
I never really considered how difficult it is to talk and do something like this at the same time.
Yeah,
That
was
was
a good
challenge.
Yeah, and
I like
hopefully people at home will play along at home. Can I say something about your book that you want to write?
Yeah.
I'm going to. So when you said I'm not an expert, okay, so I want. There's a learning moment there.
Yeah.
So I saw Seinfeld on somebody's podcast, and they were like, "Yeah, like the world." And we've said that before. Yeah, like the world needs another podcast or whatever. And you've been on Seinfeld. You've been on so many podcasts, and he's like, "Yeah, but I haven't been on this podcast." That no one's written that book. That only Emma. Like no one's done this podcast. No one's written that book that only Emily can write. So you can uncrack this code. It doesn't matter that you're not an expert because it's your breakdown. It's just like when we talked about log lines. 2 different people are going to write 2 different movies from the same log line. Well, so it doesn't. You can write this book.
And thank you. And that's why I think that it matters that I write it, because nobody's written it in modern language the way that I believe I could. The expert thing too is like that's a learning curve, because I want to make sure that if I'm going to write the book, I fully 100% understand what he's saying, and it's not just me making assumptions. But that's just I need to buy some books and dig deeper. But yes, I agree. Every like my dad just wrote a book on like the Christian faith. There's so many books on that, but he wrote it he wrote it in a way that it's meant to be understood by just regular people, and he added humor to it that only my dad could do, and examples and metaphors that only my dad could do, and that's what makes that book unique and worth existing.
And by your dad, you mean future guest author, also Dean Deal, author of Crawl, Walk, and Run. This guy right there. If you're not driving in your car, you can see that.
He wrote, he wrote a book on starting your own small business.
There you go.
That one.
Well, you did good. You did well on that.
Thanks. That was a fun one. I like
Finally.
it. Let's do it again.
That's
well,
it.
that brings us to
What?
us saying.
Oh, that thing.
Yeah.
Your favorite part of the show.
Yeah.
Why is your favorite part of the show when it's over?
I never said it was my favorite part of the show.
I think you did.
No, I didn't.
I think you did in a previous episode.
I never said that.
Well,
we couldn't have done it without
you.
Without you.